Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to see all of you today. So, organizers told me that everything is good. You can hear me, you can see me. So let's start. So my name is Irina. I'm a marketing and communication officer at T1A, and I'm going to be today's moderator. In this panel discussion, we're going to talk about data and AI-driven ESG. ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Corporate Governance, and it represents an evaluation of a firm's collective consciousness for social and environmental factors. It's typically a score that is compiled from data collected surrounding specific metrics related to intangible assets within their enterprise. In this panel discussion, you'll get a chance to learn more about data and AI-driven ESG, how technology may help your organization to understand and better implement ESG standards, and in the end, how ESG impacts business development and creates new opportunities for your company's revenue. We're going to cover both technology and business aspects of ESG implementation. And I'm very happy to present our guests, Anthony, Technical Director, Financial Services at Databricks, and Alexander Bryukhanov, Head of Risk Modeling at T1A. May I kindly ask you to briefly introduce yourself to our audience? Anthony, let's start with you.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much for your time. Nice to meet you all. So my name is Antoine. I'm the Technical Director for Financial Services at Databricks. So I joined Databricks as an industry practitioner, and my job is to bridge the gap between technical capability of the platform. So why cloud, why Spark, why Delta, why Correlated, all those different technical capabilities in the context of business use cases, in the context of ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And to create all those series of assets, technical notebooks, reusable notebooks, best practices to help our customers deliver value faster on Databricks.
Thank you, Antoine. And the next one is Alexander. Alexander, may I kindly ask you to present
Hi,
yourself?
nice to meet you. I'm head of risk modeling in T1A, and previously I worked a lot in business intelligence field, helping companies to build data warehouses and analytical systems. In different domains. So in T1A, we as practitioners work a lot with risk modeling, and we help companies to deal with risks of any kind. So as ESG topic, it's also about risk. I think we have something to say on this topic, and I have to say.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Alexander. So let's start. I think that we can start with a small, brief introduction to ESG matter. Dear Antoine, let's start with you. You may have a unique view on this matter. Having in mind that you had worked before both in institutions such as KPMG and Berkeley, and now being a technical director at Databricks. So may I ask you to briefly explain what ESG means and why is it important?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, so it's a top priority for everyone. It's a C-suite priority for every single organization in the planet. So ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And it is the set of metrics, data, guideline, framework that helps organizations quantify corporate social responsibility. So to put it another way is how ethical a specific business is. How do they support communities? What is the positive or negative impact that they may have on environment? So all those series of broad initiatives, such as being carbon net neutral by 2030 is an initiative, and ESG are the metrics to help quantify and track the performance towards that goal. So it's a top level priority, as I was saying, from so many different industries. Starting from financial services industry, nobody wants to invest in an organization that is not ethical. Nobody wants to invest in an organization that does not value their employee or they have bad environmental practice. When we look at this from a retail perspective, organization wants to understand the sustainability, the ethics around every single supplier up and down their supply chain. If you look at this from an energy company, they want to make sure that they capture all those IoT sensors to understand the carbon emission in real time and accessing those metrics to track those metrics over time and to be able to eventually to reduce carbon emission, GHG emission, or whatever those metrics and that goal may be. So this is a really high priority for every single business. The materiality may be slightly different from one organization to the other, but the underlying capability, the underlying framework of quantifying all those great impact that we do for environmental or to society is common across all those different businesses. And as we'll see later in this discussion, it becomes a data and AI challenge. So the world of ESG is completely unstructured, and how can we use technology to be able to better track, quantify those KPIs over time?
Mm-hmm. And what can you say about how is ESG? Maybe you can explain a bit more about how is ESG correlated with valuation and profitability of the organization, and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So ESG, the first one who got really into the world of ESG were asset managers. So asset managers trying to understand the sustainability of every single investment. And you will see in the literature that ESG is positively correlated with market volatility and market performance. So why? I think there are two sides of the same picture here. First, as I was saying, nobody wants to invest in an organization that is not ethical. So first, from the retail investors, everybody wants to invest in the right environment that has in the right business that has positive impact to society. So that's the first thing. But the second is when organizations try and really succeed in leveraging all that information for ESG, tracking the performance of every single truck they operate, every single ship they operate, every single equipment, every single IoT-based sensor that they operate. Then when something bad happens, they have a faster response to those disruptions because they sit on a lot of data that they could leverage whenever something bad happens. Imagine Suez Canal, something bad happens there. Where do you reroute your ship to minimize disruption to your business? Imagine a supplier getting a bankruptcy, and how do you effectively maintain the flow of goods and products directly to your customers, to your end customers? So ESG means resilience. Resilience means less market volatility, faster response to disruption. So there is this correlation causation, obviously, of people investing in ESG green organization, but also organization having a much better code of conduct using the information that they have around ESG. And overall, that means less market volatility, better performance.
Okay, thank you, Antoine. Thank you very much for explanation. And it seems that often I can hear something that now ESG is more important for companies who can influence, who can impact the nature, but it seems to be not true. They tell that ESG is more important to companies, I don't know, who's working with petroleum or something like this, but that's not true. I think that this is a stereotype, and only people who didn't understand what does it mean ESG and why should we work with it. Think so. So seems that it's important for each company.
It is absolutely. I said it's a top level priority for every single business, regardless of the sector of the industry. And again, reputation risk, market risk, operation risk. So it's deeply like relates into risk management, as Alexander mentioned just before. So regardless of the angle we want to approach that problem of ESG, becomes a priority for everyone. And environmental, social, and governance, those are all different topics that are all important. So there is no like only investing in organizations that do good for society or for environment. It's really about supporting organizations that do good for society in general.
Thank you, Antoine. So, and the next question would be for you, Alexander. What do you think? How technology may help us to monitor and disclose ESG KPIs to the public?
Okay. I think I will focus mainly on. Sorry.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I will focus mainly on this monitoring part of this question because I think there is no actual technical challenges to actually disclose these KPIs if you have it. And about monitoring, well, of course, ability to constantly monitor your KPIs and ESG is it's not an exclusion here. It's very important, and here technology, of course, can help. And if you apply a data-driven approach here, well, you definitely can go away from this routine handcrafted reports, and you have ability to understand and connect this ESG metrics and ESG KPI with actual business strategy you apply in your company, in your business. You can see how concrete decisions affect these KPIs, and it's very important to have this loop. Right, but still, from technical point of view, it's indeed a complex task, and you have to think about core technology behind this. And if you have proper set of tools, of technologies here, you can actually build a system that will be able to do this and to be able to monitor ESG KPIs constantly. And it's after all, it's all about data management. Of course, ESG involves a lot of unstructured data from media. All foundational data problems like volume, velocity, and variety of the data, well, you have to deal with them here. But it's not something well unusual. And from technical point of view, I think I would like to share one slide to show you all. It's like an example of architecture.
Yeah, let us see.
Sure. Okay. I think you should see it now. Please, Irina, please.
I cannot
can you
see.
Hear?
Go.
And now?
Nope. Still not. Here we are. Yeah.
Okay.
But we also can see your chat.
it looks like you can see my actual PowerPoint slide, right?
Yeah, here we are. Yeah. Analytics,
super.
architecture. We see it.
Yeah.
Cool. Could you please explain us a bit about the details, maybe also for more business people, not the technical one?
Sure. Well, actually, I think most of you see this kind of architectures. It's kind of common analytics architecture, but still we may use it for this ESG, building ESG monitoring tasks. And actually, as an example here, I think we can use Microsoft Azure platform as core technology, as a layer to actually integrate all component of system. And of course, there is a Databricks technologies, Databricks analytical platform, and Data Lake, and other tools Databricks provide can really help to build system that will be able to constantly aggregate new data from different data sources and to quickly process it and actually have some insight, and we can use these insights in business applications. So from left to right, briefly. So of course, you have some data sources, and as I mentioned before, for ESG, a lot of data have to be have external by nature, like media, news, a lot of sources, and of course we want our system to be able to process it, and here we have to deal with it. But as I mentioned, Databricks and Azure have a lot of tools to do this. Of course, we have some structured data sources because, for example, governance part of this ESG thing involves some data, some structured data. Actually, companies already have, and because they have their ERP and CRM systems, that also we have to deal and work with this data to understand how operation risks and how actually good company perform on operational level. Then we have data lake and data lab layers, and we have this set of tools like Spark, Azure ML, and so on, to actually work with this to build pipelines, to be able to, for example, do text mining, to understand all things required to actually find data required from this non-structured data from news, for example. And at the end of this chain, we have business applications layer, and here you see the small square with the ESG. And of course, we have to display this metrics. And again, to sum up, we can look at this building ESG monitoring and task as more or less typical data tasks, and we have modern technologies to actually perform this. And it's very important to build such system to be able to not just measure this ESG, but understand how actually decisions made by business affect this score and vice versa. I hope you heard me.
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. Antoine, maybe you would like to add something about this architecture, or we can just go by.
Yeah, no, just one point to make on the Alexander mentioned like unstructured data, and I think that's one of the key challenge in the world of ESG. When we look at the top 50, I think that was the top 50 most disclosed ESG policy. Only 10 are metrics, numbers. The rest is text, initiatives, broad statements. So it's highly unstructured and unquantifiable by default. And this is where technology could be used to be able to start extracting all that information coming from so many different places. Alexander mentioned news, for instance. So understanding how organizations are being mentioned in the news, the impact that their initiative had to the communities that they supported. Trying to understand and then extract signals from unstructured data and map those signals into an ESG policy is a technology problem. And as I will be showing you then later, is how to apply this data and AI-driven approach to ESG is what really matters. To be able to really quantify an ESG strategy and not just talk about great things, but do great things and track those great things over time. So the platform that Alexander showed makes perfect sense to me. So being able to embrace cloud, being able to embrace unstructured data, and being able then to act on those data using dashboarding capability, MI and BI type of dashboarding to be able to really act on those metrics.
Thank you, Antoine. I can add just one small thing that as a communication specialist, I can say that maybe all my colleagues and in all communication conferences about public relations, about marketing, we are talking about how to extract, for example, all text news, text data, analyze it and understand which reputation, which image our company has, and which image we create on the social. And ESG is also a very hot topic for all marketing and also communication specialists for now. So all things you've mentioned, it's like, it's very cross professional, cross industry thing, and very hot topic, yeah, as I told before. And maybe you can if we are speaking about practical standpoint, maybe you have some examples about how does ESG implementation is changing the company culture. Maybe I don't know, maybe you can share some of the pain points or challenges you have seen while undergoing the whole process, something from the practical cases you've had in your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So it changes a company culture. As first, the needs to break silos. The information sitting in an HR system is miles away from the information for customers. It's miles away from data coming from IoT sensors or wherever that may be. So from an organization standpoint, it being able to break those silos and take that kind of slice of data, but end-to-end across every single business unit. The travel data, the HR system data, the pay data, the CRM, the ERP, and all those different systems being able to access that information and correlate that information. So first, in terms of the data access. Secondly, in terms of the data culture as well. So if I take an example of things that we've seen, for instance, in energy companies, you get C-suite talking about ESG, and they want to be ethical business, and they want to be, I don't know, carbon net neutral by 2030. So that's the C-suite initiatives. But whenever you go and talk to a site manager, to a plant manager who needs to operate those pipes, those wells, and you ask them about what are their ESG strategy, simply they don't have. They have a plan to operate. The fact that the company wants to be carbon net neutral in 20 years time from now, it's not necessarily their priorities. And what those organizations have been able to do is to map operation metrics into an ESG framework, being able to stream all that information upstream to a BI, MI dashboard, so that the C-suite will be able to start looking at this from almost an anomaly detection standpoint and being able to say, hey, this specific pipe in that specific site operating this specific person is increasing the level of, I don't know, so carbon emission on this specific site seems to be completely off the chart compared to other sites. So potentially you should go and check that. So it's almost like streaming all those operation metrics upstream, map that into an ESG strategy, and then send those recommendations downstream to be able to operate that site better. And mapping really the site manager, plant manager to a C-suite and looking at this really end-to-end from an organization standpoint.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Antoine. And ECG, maybe, I don't know, for people who have never heard, detailed information about ECG, it could be a complex thing to comprehend. So maybe you can bring us closer to how does Databricks quantifies ECG, and how do you create your data-driven ECG score? So maybe you can just bring us closer to Databricks approach, and what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I can do even better. I can show you a demo. I think we have some time then later.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But so this is, as we keep saying, this is a complex problem. This is a complex problem because of it's difficult to quantify subjective initiatives. It's difficult to extract information to be able to quantify those initiatives. So as Databricks, what we did is we are not an ESG company. We are not an ESG rating company. We are a platform, a data and AI platform. And with that platform, there are plenty of different use cases that you can address, ESG being one. So instead of just talking about ESG, we just created a series of solution accelerators, reusable notebooks, to show how an organization would be able to use a framework like this to start quantifying ESG policies. And the approach that we have is whenever you go to companies' websites and you will get all those PDF documents, about 120 pages long document that says this business, they do really great thing for society, really great thing for environment. But first, it's a PDF document. Second, it's just like not necessarily objective. It's organization disclosing the great things that they're doing. So first, can we effectively programmatically extract that information to understand what a company talks about? But then correlate that with different sources of data, such as news or social media, to understand whether or not they walk the talk. Whether or not they just simply like set some bold statements around ESG, or whether or not those initiatives were actually action, and what the reception of those communities, what the reception from the media, what the reception from the people, the communities that they invested to. So being able to bridge the gap between those two sides of the picture to understand how not just only like how great company talks about ESG, but how great company do around ESG. And this data-driven framework is just the foundation for all customers to be able to extend, to expand, to accommodate their needs.
Sorry, I was mute. Thank you, Antoine. But maybe I may ask you to go through a demo so we can see it with our listeners.
Absolutely. Yes, so let me know when you see my screen.
Yeah, here we are.
That's fine. Good. So as I was saying, it's one thing to talk about the different type of use cases that we see. It's another thing to look at what concretely those use cases looks like, what type of infrastructure you need, reference architecture, what type of data you need, and what type of framework you could use as an organization to start addressing those problems. So as I was mentioning, ESG is one, but we created multiple solutions around risk management, around reputation risk, around transaction enrichment, customer 360, or all those different use cases that are relevant in financial services or in different industries. This is not, again, just a off-the-box, off-the-shelf product, ESG product, but more about a reusable notebook that helps you get there faster. We show you, as an example, using this blog, This is why we believe it's a data and AI problem. This is how we see Delta being the foundation, Lakehouse being the foundation to start extracting insights from unstructured data. This is where we see ML flow coming up to start creating more governance aspect to the modeling that we could create of those PDF documents. And then we walk you through the code that helps you get there. And at the end of this blog, you get access to the underlying notebook. So you can import that notebook and get started faster. So this series of notebooks, as I was mentioning, is being able to bridge the gap between what company says and what company do. So the first is, can we programmatically extract insights from those great PDF documents, those corporate social responsibility documents, those companies disclose on a yearly basis, but then being able to correlate that with different sources of information that we could get from news or from social media or from different sources of information. Before joining Databricks, I was at Barclays. So I was leading the AI strategy for Barclays. Barclays, as another organization, like every other, disclosed this great PDF on a yearly basis. 116 pages long document that shows how great Barclays do for environmental, for social, and for governance. But as I was mentioning, if you look at those documents in detail, those are mostly text initiatives. And that solution accelerator is being able to programmatically extract that text, to be able to understand what that text means, and almost creating a machine-learned taxonomy that is common across all those different industries. When there is no standard, when there is no monitoring, when there is no automation, AI could be used to start creating a much more standardized approach to ESG, a better, more objective taxonomy. So this solution here shows you how to get started by just scraping, not this one, apologies, that's this one. That's the first notebook. So we show you how to get started with just an example of 20 PDF documents, programmatically extracting text, programmatically extracting all those sentences, and then stepping into the world of natural language processing just as a baseline model first, to understand what those different sentences mean. And when we learn themes, topics from PDF document for ESG, we start learning themes associated to corporate social responsibility. We start learning themes like diversity and inclusion, green energy, code of conduct, risk management, supporting communities, valuing employees. Those are themes that we can effectively extract because they become common across all those different PDF that we can machine learn. Once we get this, first you can use it to summarize a complex PDF document. So what did this organization do with respect to valuing employees? Those are the key initiatives disclosed by all those organizations. But the crux of the problem lies here. When there is no correlation between different rating agencies across ESG, and an MSCI may tell you that this organization is an 80 out of 100, Sustainalytics may give you that this company is a 60 out of 100, this data-driven framework will help you to bridge the gap between those different scores and create a much more objective approach. This specific graph shows all those machine learned policies, themes that we see. And all those different organizations that we read those PDF from will show you what is the key priority or the over or under communication across every single theme. I said I'm from Barclays before joining Databricks. Barclays over communicate around code of conduct, potentially under communicate around valuing employees. Another one will be over communicating around valuing employees, under communicating around ethical finance. So that gives you a sense of what potentially are the key priorities, but that does not tell you that this organization does not value employees. That just tells you that this organization communicates less around valuing employees. And this second notebook is exactly that, is being able to leverage that intelligence that we learn from PDF and apply that intelligence into a proxy data set, such as news. We show you how to get started with ingesting all those different news using a data set here. We show you that this is a really complex problem of scale, 100 million of records for the last 18 months only. It contains news, it contains unstructured text, So how do we start extracting and applying that model that we train into the world of news to classify every single article? So doing so, that gives you a real-time view of the world. This is the sentiment analysis for every E, S, or G related article for a specific organization. And instead of waiting 1 year to hear what company says about the great things that they're doing, we have a 15 minutes window that tells me everything I need to know about that organization, how they act. If we do things right, then we have this real-time view of an ESG strategy for every single organization in the planet, using news, using social media. We can see how those topics converge over time. We can infer those different relationships between different businesses. So it's great that these organizations do good, but they do business with organizations directly or indirectly related with environmental bad practice. This graph theory will effectively correlate that information, bring those different contexts and concepts together. And I was mentioning the materiality may be different. You could look at this from a reputation risk. We could look at this from a supply chain resilience. We could look at this from a market profitability. We looked at this initially from a concept of market risk. I generate a synthetic portfolio. I just run that through this framework, and let's see whether or not I could see some potential correlation. And what this graph shows, by the end of this simple synthetic portfolio, that if I were to invest in bad ESG practices or good ESG practices, I would have a risk that is 2 times higher. And that just relates to your question, Irina, that you had in the introduction. Is ESG correlated with market volatility? Yes, it is. Maybe there is some correlation, but in fact, that those ESG practices have a direct effect on the market volatility, and how organization could bring that to a risk management practice. So that's it for the core foundation of that notebook. But we've seen those series of notebooks being used, being extended, being further configured. The code is all free. We have organizations, pension funds, who stream millions and billions of data points and use graph theory to be able to link those concepts together. We work with organizations who took only that series of notebook, and instead of scraping 20 PDF documents, they scrape the whole industry. That just gives you an idea of me taking my own solution and scraping all the top 500 US companies. For each of them, that simple BI dashboard tells me everything I need to know about that specific stock. So if I want to invest in Ameriprise today, Ameriprise does not seem to talk a lot around ESG. But when we look at this from news, they outperform their peers. They outperform their peers against every single policy that you could machine learn. And no longer just simply looking at Ameriprise PDF document, but extracting those initiatives, understanding how they relate into the world of news, and whether or not they outperform or underperform their peers. That tells you everything you need to know about what did Ameriprise do with respect to renewable energy. What did Ameriprise do with respect to board of directors? Do they have the right number of women in the board or the different ethnic groups in the board? What do they do with data privacy? All those different topics here could be contextualized for you to take the right decision, whatever the decision may be. And this real-time view of news, such as anything, every time something bad happened that mentioned Ameriprise, that will be streamed real-time for you to take the right decision, the impact it may have on stock price, or whatever the materiality here. So that's just an example of how organization could take those type of notebooks and extend that to much more data, and then further extend that to social media, to different type of data sets. Or we use only some bits and pieces of that solution accelerator, such as scraping PDF documents. So we've seen major success here about how those different solutions could be used. But as I was mentioning, ESG is one solution among others. Organization will be looking at this. Risk management, reputation risk, retail customers, retail industry will be looking at this from a customer 360, segmentation, lifetime value. those are not off-the-shelf products, but more reusable framework to help accelerate time to value.
Thank you, Antoine. Thank you so much. Sorry, Alexander, you were asking something.
Yeah, actually, I think it's great that you have this solution accelerators, and everyone can just well take hands on it and understand that ESG is not something in the sky, you know, but actually understand better what is it about. And another thing I think was very interesting that this tool to actually fill the gap between actions that company actually states and what actually they real do. It's maybe very important thing to understand it. So thank you. Okay, and actually I see some questions here.
Are we going to tell me, you Alexander, Antoine, are we going to answer now or maybe at the end of our panel discussion? How would be more comfortable for you?
Depends on the question.
You're right. And okay, we have a question about methodology. What is the methodology behind developing ESG report?
Yes, okay. And does it have some standards also?
Yeah.
So again, different views depending on what we call the ESG maturity curve. So every organization discloses those CSR reports. Most of organizations will take, there is a reason why those reports are being disclosed on a yearly basis. It takes time to build those reports. And there is not necessarily technology that is always being used internally to create those reports, but all those Excel spreadsheets punched through different systems to start to collect all that information, to normalize all that information, and then to render that kind of nice PDF report. But there are some standards. There are some standard that starts to coalesce around the use of ESG. And we've seen more and more organizations being able to kind of programmatically extract most of those metrics that will eventually feed this PDF document. And where those standards comes in are really that normalization of data, those are the policy that needs to be disclosed. Those are the type of raw metrics that I have from my different systems. And this is how I could automate that construction of those scores or those KPIs that I need to disclose into my PDF document. But still, it's a PDF document, still manual effort, and that's for me the main reason why it takes too much time. So the world is starting to standardize a little bit more. Technology is definitely here to help, but as Alexander showed, it's more on the data collection, data curation, data processing that will eventually feed those reports rather than disclosing metrics directly.
Right. Well, actually, I think we can separate two topics. So we can measure ESG KPIs for kind of internal usage, and then we can disclose this, and it's a different topic. And actually, second question, I think I can answer because it's related to my to other thing I wanted to say. Second question: you're a tech company. Why did you choose forward with something like this? Meaning, it is not a definition of tech topic. Well, as practitioners, we actually understand that if company will have this tool to measure ESG KPIs, and of course they will want to have additional tools to improve it. And here we can help with them because actually what we do as a company, we're helping to improve business processes and to deal with risks in a better way. And actually, If you let me a bit extend this topic, Irina, I can go a bit deeper here.
Yeah. Sure, definitely. If we start talking about use cases, so maybe you can tell us a bit more, about risk side also.
Sure. Well, I think important thing here that we can look at this ESG score as well, a couple of metrics, and of course we want to have the ability to drill down into it and understand how it was calculated, and understand what key influencers for and where was for this risk score in particular area. And I think I can go a bit deeper in this G letter to illustrate what I want to say. So G in this ESG topic corresponds to governance, and usually people thinking on topics like board structure, diversity, stakeholder rights, and other boring stuff. But at the same time, many players, and for example, I read SAP Global article. They talk about using additional business metrics here. So because we want to know how company doing things on operational level, because it's of course it's related to how well governed this company, and how it's too much about quality of company management systems. And here, for example, we can help company to improve something and somehow improve the ESG overall rate, overall score. For example, if we have, let's assume that we have problems and non-effective business decisions are made, and of course it should be related with a governance score. And here, from practical point of view, we can understand it, and we can, for example, if we see that company have problems with revenue, but when actually they have it, it's too late to maybe it's too late to change anything. And we company may want to find some kind of proxy metrics to key business metrics. And here, if they have this, if they use data-driven approach and have modern analytics platform, it's can be done. We can actually find metrics that can be used as a proxy, but for example, they can be measured more often, and they can highlight if you have something. If you have problem in advance before actually something wrong happen. And this data science techniques, A/B testing framework may be used, and other touch things that actually we as consulting company offer to our clients. Well, I hope I bring some light on this.
Yeah, definitely. I just repeat to all our listeners, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to write it, to text it to us, and Antoine and Alexander will answer to you. And we have the third question, which is it ESG something that is mainstream only, like a movement? What is the real value behind it? Like for me, obviously I'm not an expert in ESG like you, Antoine, or like Alexander, but for me it seems that ESG is more about finding insights and taking decisions based on these insights. Antoine, Alexander, could you please add something?
Yes. So I think it's definitely something that we didn't really talk about 10 years ago. So that's something that came really as a more of a trend. But that is now much more than just a trend or a good practice. It actually makes sense for everyone's business. As I was mentioning, it's no longer just even like how ethical you are or how green you are and mitigating reputation risk. It actually makes a difference when something bad happens, when you have that volatile time of COVID and you need to ensure the flow of goods across your different suppliers. Then you realize that it's more than just like trends and shiny topics. It actually makes sense for your business in terms of operational resilience. And I remember that quote, I was just Googling that quote again. That came from Tidjane Thiam, the former CEO of Credit Suisse. And he said, I cite, high quality business that adhere to sound ESG practices will outperform those that do not. So as you can see, even if it started initially from an asset management perspective, now that just completely changed the game in terms of how data and AI could be used within the ESG framework to effectively be much more resilient, much more sustainable to the future. And it's no longer just a kind of trendy topic. It's now completely mainstream. Should you need to run a multi-million-dollar business, you need to have the right ESG strategy in place. It's mandatory now.
So thank you, Antoine. And my next question would be to you, Alexander. Like, okay, let's imagine our listeners right after this panel discussion will decide, okay, I need this. I want to implement some ESG tools, and you as a consultant, like, what would be your advice to the organizator, to organizations who are thinking about implementing ESG? Maybe why should they do that? Okay, not why they should do that. What would be the first steps in this process? And maybe some of your advices just to start. What is important to do?
Well, actually, I think it's well, we need to understand company's goal. So if they want to look better in investors' eyes, it's one thing. If they want to actually use this KPI to well measure and understand what actual business decisions lead to, yeah, so it's a little bit different. So okay, again, I think it can be useful to focus on well metrics that are really related to concrete company. So for example, if you're a financial institute, you should not worry much about ecological, right? But you have a lot of risks because, for example, if it's B2C segment, of course, it's a lot of operational risks, anti-fraud risks, and so on. And you have to measure it, and you have to do something with it. And this G part of this ESG overall score, I think you should focus on this mainly. And of course, if you have proper data platform, then you can add additional models and, for example, do this monitoring from social news media to actually, monitor and mark yourself and understand what actually people and other media talk about your company. It can be useful.
Yeah, definitely. And okay, since we have you, Antoine, here, I'd like to ask you about some spoilers. What we may expect from Databricks Kitchen in the future regarding ESG? Maybe you can tell us a bit, give us some spoilers.
Yes. So first, as Databricks has just any other organization, we want to make sure that we do great for communities, for people, for employees, for environment. So there is also some internal ESG practices that we have. And I just wanted to mention that we've been mentioned in the news a couple of weeks ago around winning an award for fair pay. So we are one of the only organization now awarded for same salary for same job, regardless of your gender, ethnicity, group, or whatever those. So you see that the world is starting to get into those standards, those different ways of making sure that everybody is doing the right thing. So that's the internal ESG. So you will see more and more in terms of what we do for people, what we do for communities. There are some solutions that we created in terms of what's coming up next. There are solutions that go in different that solves different use cases than just ESG, as I was mentioning. So keep an eye on the Solution Accelerator hub page. So you will see a lot of industry-grade content to solve some really complex industry use cases. But whenever it comes to ESG, as I was quickly alluding to before, we've seen more and more how organizations can operationalize ESG and move away from just a CSR report to actually streaming IoT-based data, to start preventive maintenance, to start understanding the carbon emission at every single step of a potential operation pipeline, and being able to feed that back into an ESG strategy. So we're working potentially on solutions where organization will be able to address that real complex problem, industry-based problem, beyond just one simple like notebook as an example, but more transformational, to your point about what does that change for an organization.
Okay, thank you, Antoine. Thank you, Alexander. So I just want to tell to all our listeners that if you have any questions, or maybe you are interested in ESG, on implementing ESG in your company, and you are thinking what steps should you do, for all attendees of this panel discussion, T1A is ready to, you can contact T1A and we are ready to give you just free consultancy and just help you understand which first steps you can do. So if you have any questions, just contact us. I just want to thank you, Antoine. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you all our listeners for being with us, and have a nice day. See you later.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.